Hello everyone. It's blue balloons everywhere. Yes, you've guessed right. It's a male child. We'll see how the development goes and how the indifferent gonad forms the adult male reproductive system so that the blue balloons can be bought. So, this section has been divided into the development of the penile urethra. We'll see how the penile urethra, the urinary section of the penile system is formed. We'll see how the production of prepuce goes, and finally the development of the scrotum. In short, this section is about the development of the male genital system. We'll see how various parts of male genital system are formed, what are the embryonic precursors, and what embryonic structures are actually left out of development and they undergo they're not a part of adult genital system anymore and they regress. So let's get into it. So first of all, what happens? There was an indifferent gonad under the influence of androgens, which are actually the testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, which are secreted by Leydig cells of the fetal testes. The development of external genitalia proceeds towards the male axis or the male counterpart. So the genital tubercle, this is the genital tubercle. This genital tubercle, it enlarges in size, it enlarges rapidly, it becomes cylindrical to form a phallus. So what is phallus? Phallus is an enlarged genital tubercle which undergoes rapid development under the influence of androgens. It is also known as a primitive penis. So the enlargement of this phallus causes the production of penis. It forms the adult penis. So as the phallus elongates, it pulls the urethral folds forward under it. So these are the primitive urethral folds. So as the phallus is enlarging, it also pulls the urethral folds along with it. The extension of the urethral folds on underside of surface of the phallus continues. Now the primitive urethral folds, they extend on the undersurface of phallus. Up to the tip of phallus, then form the primordia of the glands of penis. So, in the figure you can see, the phallus is continuing to grow. This blue structure, the phallus is expanding rapidly. With its expansion, it's taking the primitive urethral folds along with it. Here you can see the primitive urethral folds are also developing along with the phallus. The extension of primitive urethral folds continues under the surface of phallus at the same time. The urethral groove, this is the urethral groove, this area below the green. So this urethral grooves goes up to the tip of the phallus and helps in the production of the upper expanded part of the penis, which is known as the glans penis. So concurrently, the phallic part of the urogenital septum, urogenital sinus also extends to the base of the developing glans penis. So at the same time, the phallic part of the urogenital sinus, so the distal part of the urogenital sinus also comes to lie very near to the developing glans penis. So we have the endodermal epithelial lining of the phallic part of the urogenital sinus, which proliferates to form the urethral plate. So this is the endodermal urethral plate, which is derived from the phallic part of the urogenital sinus. The phallic part is the distal part of the urogenital sinus. The endoderm of this part helps in the formation of a urethral plate. The urethral plate extends forward within the phallus along the floor of the primitive urethral groove up to the base of developing glans penis. So here you can see this is the part that is developing into the glans penis, and this is the part of the urethral plate. It extends to the developing glans penis. So the solid urethral plate now gets canalized to form a hollow tube. In the figure A, you can see this is a solid tube. This urethral plate is a solid tube. It becomes canalized in the figure B to form a hollow tube. So after this, there's formation of a definitive urethral groove as the development continues. This is the definitive urethral groove after the rupture of the urogenital membrane, and this is the final structure that is formed. This is the lumen of the urethra, and there's the fusion of the definitive urethral folds to form the penile raphe. We'll see how that happens in the subsequent slides. So a bilaminar urogenital membrane. So this is the urogenital membrane, which consists of two layers. Now separates the newly formed endodermal tube from the primitive urethral groove. So this is the primitive urethral groove, and this is the newly formed endodermal tube. So there's a urogenital membrane in between that is separating this primitive urethral groove as well as the endodermal tube. So the urogenital membrane now breaks to form the definitive urethral grooves, which are flanked by the definitive urethral folds. This can be seen in the figure behind. This is the rupture of the urogenital membrane, as a result of which the definitive urethral groove has been formed, which is flanked by the urethral flanked by this urethral grooves on either urethral folds on either side. So now end of the third month is occurring. The two definitive urethral folds now fuse with each other in a craniocaudal direction. That is, the fusion begins in the cranial part and then the fusion proceeds to the caudal part. Now this helps in the formation of penile urethra up to the base of the glans penis. So this was the region of the glans penis. So the fusion of the urethral folds in this scenario in a craniocaudal fashion helps in the production of penile urethra up to the base of the glans penis. Now the surface ectoderm also fuses in a medial plane, and this is what forms the penile raphe. So we have seen that in the figure. This was the genital swelling. This was the primitive urethral fold. This was the phallic part of the urogenital septum, which was forming the newly formed endodermal tube. This was the urogenital membrane. This urogenital membrane ruptured to form the definitive urethral groove, which was flanked on either side by urethral folds. Now, by the end of third month of development, the urethral folds, they fuse in a craniocaudal fashion to form the penile urethra up to the base of the glans. The surface ectoderm also fused to form the penile raphe. Now, proceeding with the development of the penile urethra, the spongy part of the penile urethra, which has been formed, which has just been discussed, extends up to the base of the glans. It only extends up to the base of the glans till here. Now, during the fourth month, the ectodermal cells from the tip. So the ectodermal cells from the tip, they form, they penetrate inwards towards the gland, towards the lumen of the glans. They form a short, solid ectodermal epithelial cord. So this in blue is a solid ectodermal epithelial cord, which is formed by the ectodermal cells of the glands. This cord finally canalizes and forms a terminal part of urethra and external urethral meatus. So this part then undergoes canalization and forms a terminal part of the urethra and the external urethral meatus. So development of prepuce, we'll see how that happens. So close to the tip of a phallus, a circular sulcus, which is known as the coronary sulcus. This area appears. This is the coronary sulcus. So this coronary sulcus separates the glands of the penis from rest of the shaft. Now the surface ectoderm, which covers the glands, it proliferates rapidly, because it has to form the terminal portion of the urethra as well. Now this proliferating portion grows inward, forming a double layer of ectoderm. So this is it growing inward, forming a double layer of ectoderm. Here you can see these sleeves are being formed. So these layers separate from each other to form the prepuce. So these are the layers which are actually separate from the glands to form the prepuce. So this is the prepuce. the adult form. This is the external urethral meatus. At this point, there is rapid ectodermal growth to form the double folds. So this is how the prepuce is formed, by the rapid proliferation of the ectodermal cells of the glands. So now let's see how the development of the scrotum goes. So after the fusion of the definitive urethral folds, which helped in the production of the urethra, the genital swellings are now called the scrotal swellings. So these are the fused urethral folds. So urethral folds have been fused. Now these genital swellings are known as the scrotal swellings. They move medially. They come to lie medially. Here you can see they're moving medially, and they fuse with each other to form the scrotum. Now the scrotum lies just below the root of the penis. Here you can see the scrotum lies just below the root of the penis. Each scrotal swelling forms half of the scrotum, obviously, because it's formed by a combination of two, so each half contributes 50% to it. The two halves of scrotum are separated from each other by a scrotal raphe. So here you can see this is the scrotal septum or the scrotal raphe that is separating the two halves of the scrotum. The line of fusion of these folds is known as the scrotal raphe, which can be seen in the figure. So this was all about this section. In this section, we talked about the development of the male genital organs. We saw how the indifferent gonad, under the influence of androgens, formed firstly the male, the urethral part of the male reproductive system, then how the glands enlarged to form the penis, how the glands penis formed the terminal portion of the urinary meatus, and finally how the prepuce and the scrotum were formed. Here you can see how the great gender reveals occur and how the blue balloons were finally selected so that you could display the gender to the rest of the family. For further such sections and how we can choose the pink balloons and what happens in that section, keep watching sqadia.com.